All right, let's get started. So your first assignment is to share some ideas in the chat box about the skill we're going to be working on. So please do share some comments there, and Holly will be watching and interacting with you on the chat box. The skill that we're focusing on is asking purposeful questions, and here's a brief description of what this skill is. I want you to take a moment to look over the description and tell us why you think this skill made our list of 20 skills that make STEM click. We'll be quiet for a moment so you have a chance to read and write your input. Okay. So this learning module is called Using Questions for Many Purposes, and it focuses on this skill that we're looking at. Now, to make that happen, I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint and share from my screen so that you can follow along. If you are having trouble with following the link, I'll try to share that, or have Holly share, Holly, please share a link to the website directly in the chat box so you can follow along that way. We're going to be looking at a learning module that will help us understand the skill a little bit better. And we're going to start with a video that introduces the activity that we'll be talking about for the next few minutes. And it'll introduce the skill as well. I want you, as we're watching the video here, to take a moment to think about how Katie, who's facilitating this, is using questions, and what are the questions that she's using. We'll see that a little bit better in the next video, but we'll be introduced to it here.
So now you're going to work designing a water filter, creating a prototype that people could use to filter dirty water.
In this activity, youth have the opportunity to design, build, and test a water filter. Using the engineering design process as their framework, they work in teams to select materials, design a prototype, test, and then refine their design.
All right, Mark, it's set for.
Now, I do want to be honest and let everybody know that Katie, who we just saw in the video, is here with us today. She said we could be as frank as we would be even if she weren't in the room. But since she's here, I thought I would take advantage of that. And Katie, why don't you start out a discussion? What do you see as the purpose of this activity? What is it really about?
Great. So obviously the overlying challenge is to try to create a water filter, but as it mentioned in the video, the underlying purpose, which is sort of frames the whole thing, is the engineering design process, which gives the kids a chance to go through designing, brainstorming first, working with a partner, that collaboration piece, but then coming up with creative solutions by brainstorming, creating and building, testing, and then ultimately redesigning based on the evidence that they gathered from their tests. And so it's that process that the kids get to focus on and learn through the mistakes that they make and thinking about how to improve upon their designs as they go along. And this is something that we like to emphasize that real engineers do every day in their common work that they're doing. So it's okay if it doesn't work the first time. Usually, hopefully, it maybe even doesn't work the first time, so that the kids get a chance to go through and figure out what didn't work, what they can do differently. And then also thinking through how, when you're asking the questions, you're sort of modeling what some of that thinking can be to help the kids when they do that redesign. So if you're asking them, what do you think you could change? What could you improve on? what different material might you try? These sort of questions, as you're asking them as a facilitator, sort of thinking along those lines, and then hopefully improve their critical thinking skills as well. So it's sort of a combination of the engineering design process and also getting the kids to start asking themselves and internalizing those questions as well.
So I think that's a really important distinction. It's not just about the water filter activity, it's really about this process that engineers go through. So that's going to direct some of the questions that you're asking. So that's something I want everyone to look for as we're watching the next video, where we're going to see those questions in a little bit more detail. So as we watch this video, think about, how is Katie using purposeful questions? What is the result? How do the girls react to her questions? You might even want to take some notes as we're going, or share your ideas in the chat box as we watch the video.
In this video, you will see the frontline staff person, Katie, working with a group of girls to design, test, and retest a water filter. Look for the variety of questions that she asks and how the youth respond to her questioning with deeper and clearer explanations, predictions, and observations.
So with your partner, the first step that you're going to be doing is you're going to be brainstorming how to make your water filter. So you're going to build your filter in this top part, and then we're going to test it out as a group at the end, see whose filter does what. Which group would like to start sharing the material?
So we were thinking we would have our dirty materials on top of this. We would put the water through and it would come out and it would leave the dirty materials behind.
What do you think the different functions might be?
We all catch gravel or dirt.
Okay, so gravel and dirt is being hot. Do you think they'll grabs the same size dirt?
And all different things get materials.
Okay. Do you think the different sizes of materials might affect it? Okay. Can you talk me through what you were thinking here?
We should put a little slit right there. And then we'll put the straw. And the straw will just go through there.
Oh, so you're
then
saying
a little
straws
dirty water might go. Because this is supposed to filter out some dirty water, and this has to filter out the rest.
Next, what do you see?
It's a little bit yellow, and like 1 or 2 pieces of charcoal got in it. So maybe we'll skip the charcoal next time.
So what do you think we should maybe try to get rid of some of that yellow color?
Maybe a little bit more of the cotton, or a little bit of cheesecloth.
So maybe that's part of your redesign, is where you want to put that, and you can add the other pieces. Everyone's going to get a chance to redesign these.
Okay, now we are coming back to the PowerPoint, and we're going to talk a little bit about that video that we just saw. So we're focusing on the questions and how we use questions. Katie, this was a really good interaction. Did you have to plan it ahead of time? Did you think about your questions before you got into doing the activity?
Yeah, I did. I like to think through some at least general questions that I can have sort of in my back pocket to be able to pull out when needed, especially when it's a sort of design challenge type of an activity. There's some general questions that I like to use and have the kids explain their thinking as you go through it. I also like to practice leading the activity or trying the activity myself ahead of time, and I feel by doing that I get to sort of glimpse where kids might have a challenge or where exceptions might arise, and then thinking through how to address those points preemptively is really helpful. And then something else I always try to think through is how the room will be arranged, where materials will be laid out, or how they'll be managed, any like specific time checks I need to make sure I'm keeping in mind, you know, how the girls are paired or the students will be paired off to be most effective in the work that they're doing. And so all of this sort of prep work goes into making the activities run as smoothly as possible. So yes, definitely some prep involved.
How about the rest of you, Melissa or Carly,
can you hear me? Yep, I can hear you. Somebody typed into the chat. Out lead it in the past and then drawing ideas for them, which is a great way to sort of constantly hone and fine-tune how you want to deliver an activity.
Great question. How about the rest of our presenters? Carly, Melissa, how do you prepare for an activity like this?
There's another question here for you. Elizabeth said, I found that learning by doing, one finds ways to reach specific groups of youth. Do you find that that's the case in your work with youth? Absolutely, yes. And I feel like the better that you get to know a group that you're working with, the easier it is to sort of plan for how to best interact and reach the youth that you're working with. You know, whether it's focusing on the different level of questions that are appropriate for different individuals or different group members, trying to figure out how certain kids can be the leaders and help other kids along in the process of the challenge that they're undertaking. So absolutely getting to know the group that you're working with is really helpful, and trying to adapt as much as possible in the time that you have the lesson to meet the specific group's needs.
Thanks, Katie, for your insight there. My meeting guide that I downloaded from Click2Science says that I need to be sure each participant has the opportunity to share the ideas, and I really haven't been asking the rest of the group their opinion. So, Carly, which questions do you think were most engaging in the video, and why?
This is Carly, and I watched that video before we started this, and then I rewatched it again during the webinar, and I don't think there was one specific question that really stuck out to me, but I think it was the way the questions were framed. And one of the things that I really liked was how Katie would talk to the students, and they would be explaining kind of their design concept, and she would almost be the mirror for them, and she would rephrase what the students were thinking, and then she would ask them a specific question based on what their idea was. And I thought it really helped the students hear back from somebody else what their ideas were, and come up with maybe a better answer or respond to a question that they didn't even know that there was going to be a problem or an issue with. And I felt like when the students were talking and engaged with Katie, that it really helped them stay connected with the activity, where working with students or youth, sometimes you have that big disconnect where they're not enjoying what they're doing, maybe because they think it's just a project or a grade and they don't really care about it. And so if you as an adult are taking the time to listen to what their ideas are and help brainstorm and ask them questions, I think it really helps them stay engaged in the activity.
Thanks, Carly. One of the things I was thinking about as I was watching the video is there's always a lot going on whenever you're working with youth, and there's always things that get missed. Melissa, did you notice any missed opportunities or something that you might do differently with if you were leading this activity?
I don't want to pick on Katie at all because she does such a fabulous job of leading this water filter activity. But at the beginning of the video, when the one young lady is describing using the pantyhose as a filter, Katie could have possibly asked that used to predict how successful this material will be in filtering the water. I think an opportunity to make a hypothesis was missed here, and she could have elaborated on what else she would have done to try to make, that material filter the water a little bit better. I also noticed something interesting when the girls were talking about using a straw in their designs. Katie attempted to ask a question, but the girls thought through the idea, interrupting Katie's question. So even by just starting to ask them about their designs, Katie prompted them to evaluate their designs and identify the possible flaw with using a straw in their water filter. And I think Katie talked about this a little bit earlier, but this is something that I would make sure that I did with the activity, is to make sure that the youth are focusing on practicing the engineering design process. So to make sure that they do not see their designs as a failure. If I were leading this activity, I would be sure to explain that what they learn with their initial design is just as important as the final stage. And Katie did a great job of asking the girls what they could try to change or improve on their designs, and also emphasizing the fact that each group would redesign their water filters at the end of that activity.
Yeah, that was really clear in the activity that it was about designing and redesigning, that they weren't expected to get it right the first time. I like what you pointed out about the pantyhose, because it really does happen when you're in the middle of an activity. There's opportunities that you just don't have time to pick on. But it's good when you have a video like this to be able to see that and think about it and come back to it. Katie, I really appreciate that you were willing to join us today and let us put you on the spot like this. It was really quite a while ago when we filmed this video, and I was wondering, have you done anything since then to improve your practice? What do you do to get better at teaching?
Yeah, so sort of always looking for ways to improve, and so the feedback that you get in any way is helpful, whether it's thoughts from webinar, or one thing that I like to do is sort of a self-reflection at the end of leading an activity, and really making the time to do that. And so if I'm leading an activity solo, I'll do this by myself, or if there's a co-facilitator, I'll make the time to sit down with them and do it as well. And what we like to do is sort of a plus delta chart where we say, like, these are the things that worked really well, these are the things that could be done differently or improved upon in the future, or there's some different examples that I want to try, different ways to tweak the activity. And then that allows me to go back in the future, if I re-lead this activity, to go back, or similar activity also. I can go back to my notes and say, oh, this worked well, these two students worked well together, or this is where there was some make some challenges that arose, so make sure to point that out. So that sort of reflection right at the end can really, when it's fresh in my mind, as fresh as possible, then being able to go back and utilize that resource that's been created is really helpful. And then another thing that I like to do is, if there's an outside observer able to come in, really getting them to look for certain information, like maybe how am I moving around the room, am I evenly calling on the number of different students throughout the room, how am I using wait time, whatever specific focus I would like them to watch out for. I can have that conversation, whether it's a peer or a supervisor, and have them, look out for some certain things that I'm looking for. And then after that, taking that time to have sort of a discussion with them, a debrief with them specifically around that individual topic or few topics that I was looking for really strong feedback around. So taking that time to reflect and just being aware of, there's always room for improvement, and when you do something the first time, there's going to be times where you can learn from everything that you do and improve upon it. So definitely taking the time to do that is something that I do, and finding the resources available to help you. So if you don't have a person who's able to come in and do that, using the written resources or digital resources, or also have something like Click as well could work, to watch some of those videos and get some understanding for yourself that you can do some of that reflection with.
That's a great idea, Katie. In fact, that's one of the things we're going to do following this webinar, is to think about what worked and what didn't work and what we could do better next time. But I'm kind of intrigued by the idea that it's reflection that you're talking about. And when we're talking about youth, we want them to reflect on their learning as well. So not only are you prompting them to reflect, but you're actually modeling that in what you're doing as you reflect yourself following the activity to get better at it. That's a great idea. Well, I'm really happy with how things have gone so far. I wasn't sure what to expect, and I know we had some issues with the sound, but hopefully this experience gave you a better idea of what a virtual professional development session might look like. I had really great people participating today, but you can tell they were thinking deeply about practice as we were going through the webinar, even though we're not in the same room together. And that's what we hope you'll be able to create using these virtual resources that you can download from Click2Science. Normally, we'd wrap up this session by asking each of them to kind of think about how they're going to apply what we've learned and maybe set some goals. And then I would have some notes that I'd send out later. But since the webinar was recorded, I don't think I'm going to send out any notes to each of you. But I did want to include that wrap-up part. That's an important part of the professional development that we're not going to include in our experience here today. But it is part of the process. I don't want to skip it. What I actually want to do now is get some feedback from you and our virtual audience about how you feel like this worked today and whether you think that having more experiences like this would be helpful. I've got a couple of polls that I am going to pull up, and I hope that you will take a moment to respond to those polls and tell us what you think about the webinar that we just did and what you'd like to see in a similar webinar like this. And use the chat box if you've got specific suggestions that you'd like us to implement as we go through and reflect on this. We're going to download that chat and spend some time going over it after the webinar.
Katie, this is Holly. I just wanted to make a comment on the chat box. Okay. Katie, this is Kathy, and she wrote, Katie, you did a great job in the video. You really help other educators to learn how to ask purposeful questions. Great, thanks.
So we've got a few responses to the polls. Not everybody has responded, but that's okay. It usually does happen that not everyone responds to a poll like this. But it looks like there is strong agreement that there's a need for virtual professional development, and something like this webinar might help meet that need. I do hope that you'll include maybe some more detailed feedback in the chat box or send us an email directly, because we do want to think about what we can do moving forward that will help meet these goals that I think all of us have. Let me move the polls out of our way and we'll move on to the next slide. So I do want to get some feedback from you still, and I will keep that prompt up there. But I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening with our Click2Science team as well. So keep typing while I'm talking. If you've been on the website recently, you may have noticed that there's been a few changes. We're really excited that we're launching Click2Science 1.0 this month. It's an expanded website with new learning modules, training resources, and coaching resources that engage all 20 of the skills that make STEM click. For those of you who remember when we first launched, we only had resources for 5 skills, and now we have resources for all the skills. We're also going to be hitting the road soon. We'll be at the Beyond School Hours Conference in February and National After School Association in March. So if you're at either of those events, look for us. We're going to have an exhibit booth and we'll be presenting a session. But what I'm more excited about is what we're going to be developing in terms of new resources this year. We're going to be creating more than 40 new learning modules, and they're going to be filmed all over the U.S. Right now, we're looking for locations to film at. There's a link on the website called Film With Us, and if you click on that, it'll take you to a form that you can fill out to apply to have one of those videos feature your program and your staff. We've had a few programs already apply for that, but we do encourage everyone to consider whether you'd like to have a Click2Science video featuring your program. We're really trying to capture in those videos the diversity of experiences that define after school and out of school time across the U.S. So we're looking for lots of different locations, not just traditional after school programs, but military installations or museums as well. We're also going to be developing some new PD products. So if there's anything that's not on the website now that you think would be helpful to have, let us know. We're always interested in how we can partner with you to improve the quality of STEM and after school. So if you want to talk about building a partnership, feel free to email us directly or use the Contact Us form on the website. We're trying to keep developing new resources, but we really want those resources to meet your needs. Holly, do we have any good suggestions in the chat box?
Yes, we do. And one of the things, we've had a call to action to be able to have everybody jump over to Twitter and continue the discussion about asking purposeful questions. We've also had some comments about ways that people are using Click2Science already in their programs, and we want to keep hearing about that. And continue to let us know what you want to see more of, what's been a great resource for you, how you've used it. It's just very beneficial for us. We want this to be user-generated content, so let us know in what ways we can help you out this next year.
Well, thank you, everyone, for participating. Please do keep in touch with us and let us know what we can do to work with you. And any comments or feedback you have about how the session went today would be really helpful, because we're going to have another webinar on February 11th. We're going to be focusing that one on group management during STEM. As you know, it can be really challenging to manage hands-on activities. It's a little bit different than other after-school activities. So we're going to see how Click2Science can help your staff in that area, and we're going to work on how to manage that so that we don't have nearly as many sound issues next time. I do also want to let you know we have a virtual conference coming up on February 5th where we're partnering with National 4-H Council. If you get emails from us regularly, you've probably already heard about that. But if you don't receive those messages, then we encourage you to register on the website, because we do need your permission as a registered user to be able to send you those messages. But we will have all those details out in email if you're following us on email. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I do appreciate having such a great audience and the participation that we had from you. I'll look back at the chat box and follow up with any comments you have. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Bye, everyone.